Hey everybody, final thoughts time for St. Petersburg 2.0. Okay, well, there are 8 things to talk about here. 8 new improvements, expansions, upgrades, changes, and let's just go through them one at a time. First of all, with certainly the most noticeable thing, the art, the upgrade in art. Now, I gotta say for the record, both Jen and I, we prefer the classic, although I know a lot of people hate it with a passion. But I think that's just because maybe they're not familiar with the style of art that this is emulating. This is kind of like a cartoony style of 17th century Russian art. And if you were to see the two side by side, you'd see, wow, they really nailed it. And so for me and Jen, we've always viewed this art as, very, very evocative and of the right time and place. But still, a lot of people think it just looks like crap. And so, the publishers heard them and completely commissioned an entirely new set of art, redesigned the graphic design for everything from the ground up. And I'm for sure for a lot of people, this new art style is much, much improved. Now, I think it's nice, and if I had never seen the original stuff, I'd be perfectly happy with it. I'd say, hey, it's a nice looking game. But as it is, I still find myself preferring the classic because it's really, really unique. This stuff looks good. It looks very clean and sharp and modern, but it makes the game look just like any other game out there. Whereas the original St. Petersburg was iconic in its visuals, and I don't think it is anymore. It's very well done. It's very professional. It's very sharp, and for a lot of people, it's probably improvement. But that's that. It's totally aesthetic, though. It doesn't change the gameplay at all. So let's talk about the remaining 7 elements of gameplay. Let's see. These events, they're nice. I could take them or leave them. I think they're probably going to be much more interesting with more than 2 players because Jen and I found in 2 players that it's pretty much usually, hey, you know what? One of us is going to grab the extra money and the other one of us is either going to increase their hand size or is just going to grab something out of the discard pile because these other ones are demonstrably weaker. And so, there's sort of an interesting thing. If you had 5 players, as all the good ones get gobbled up, there's going to be fewer and fewer ones. But with only 2 players, there's only, you never really have to worry about getting into the weaker ones. And so I think there's kind of a trick missed there. Actually, I think what should have happened is for every time you play this game, as part of setup in a 2-player game, you randomize the 6, and only 3 of them are going to come out. And so then every time you have a better chance of seeing something interesting as opposed to, all 6 are there every time. So I think, they're okay, but as it's designed as a 2-player edition, it's not that great. I can see it being better with 3. That's going to be a common refrain throughout a lot of these modules, by the way. In that, to me, it's pretty obvious that improving the 2-player experience for St. Petersburg was not the core intent of 2.0. All right, so next one. The objectives. Now, these I like. These are very, very cool. They work fantastically. I like the notion of having 3. Okay, well, I could be shooting after any of these types of 3 end games, but over the course of the game, I got to dump one of them. And then finally, which of these am I going to do? I think this is the best one. And then you stick with it and you try to score the points. All that stuff works great. Really like it. I think these are a great, great addition to the game. Equally, maybe even more so, I love these obstacles. They add a lot of challenge to the game, particularly that second obstacle and because actually I should say the rules have a very specific setup that you're supposed to put a certain type into certain spots, but if you really want to play the game to its most interesting, you just randomize them and you see what you get, and which is what Jen and I have been doing. And if you get an obstacle in the second and the third spot, those ones can be very tough to prepare for, and they really alter your early game and create a lot more competition to make sure you can achieve everything on there. And I think that's great. That's actually a marked improvement to 2-player because traditionally as a 2-player game, St. Petersburg, there's not that much. Players can definitely kind of go down their own road and kind of ignore what everybody else is doing. With these things where we both, if this were on the 35, I need to have 5 unique worker types. I gotta get that guy before Jen gets it. Even though I'd like to get this other guy because he'd be a lot cheaper, I gotta go for the more expensive one. I think these obstacles are fantastic. By far, the coolest addition to this game. And I should say, spoiler alert, even though I'm sticking with my original one and I'm not sticking with the 2.0, for reasons I'll talk about in the future, I will really, really miss these objectives. I think they are the bee's knees. They are a wonderful addition. My hat's off to whoever came up with them. Not the objectives, the obstacles. The objectives, they're very cool as well, but I really love these obstacles. All right, what else is there? Well, there's a whole passel of new cards, those purple cards, stuff like that. They're all cool, but you know what? They were all available Maybe not all of them. I haven't actually done a thorough cataloging, but it seems like the majority of the new cards that go into all the decks were pretty much, they came with, the New Society and Banquet expansions for this anyway. So they're all cool, but I've already got them, so I'm not terribly worried about that. So what is that? That's the events, the obstacles, the objectives. Oh, the assistants. Now this is another one that's very disappointing to me, because the game actually comes with not just these 2 that you saw in my run-through, but with 5 total. And at the beginning of the game, when you're handing out randomly, which wooden pieces go to everybody, you also hand out an assistant. So everybody has, they're better at buying one type of card or another, or $2 off of every upgrade card. And so that's really nice. Here's the thing that I think sucks as a 2-player thing. Every time you play the 2-player game, it's always supposed to read the red and the blue. And it's just these 2 that pass back and forth over and over and over again throughout the entire game. And as a 2-player game, I just think, that's so boring. Why all these other cards? Why can't they come in? Why isn't there some kind of alternating shuffle where, hey, these are the 2, and then this one goes out of the shuffle, this one moves to player 2, and then player 1 gets this one, or something a little bit more cool, so that whenever you play a 2 or heck even a 3-player game, you get a little bit more variety out of these assistants. The fact that in a 2-player game, it is always going to be the lawyer and the architect just swapping back and forth throughout the entire game. That seems like a missed opportunity, and I would almost rather play without these because there's no cool, exciting spark to it. It's just kind of dull and sits there flat. Again, I can imagine with more players, it's very, very cool to say, hey, in 2 turns from now, I'm going to be getting the discounts on merchant cards. So while I could go for the merchant now, I should really wait 2 more rounds because that's when this comes along. Just the constant switching back and forth between the 2, very, very boring in a 2-player game, but cooler with more. All right, let's see. So that's the new cards, the assistants, the events, I should actually have a list of all this stuff. Actually, I think there is a list here, isn't there? Yes. The banquet, okay. So, I think then the only thing I haven't talked about is the market, which of course is the really the star attraction, the big ticket item. This whole deck of new cards that you can buy and invest in. And now I know a lot of people love this expansion. In fact, some people go so far as to say that it saves St. Petersburg, because it's a really common complaint with St. Petersburg that aristocrats are too powerful, that there are so many points to be had for them that everybody has to compete on them because otherwise one player will just run away. And so a lot of people who feel that way. For the record, Jen and I don't feel that way. We don't think the aristocrats are unbalanced compared to everything else. I've won going heavy into real estate against a heavy aristocrat. It's all situational. But for people who think that aristocrats are too much, these are great in that they provide a very viable alternate path to victory. Because you can, if you really push hard on the market and manage a majority in, be top dog status in the majority of these market columns, you can rack up a ton of points. And they can very easily rival what the aristocrat is going to pull in. And so for a lot of people, these are a no-brainer. And they're a great addition. Plus, the fact that they actually allow for 5, because you want to have 5 players, that's a great addition too. Now, I'm not going to disagree that, they're neat. And I love being able to get chickens, or actually I should say Jen loves being able to get chickens. And, and there's more variety and all that. So it's great to have that variety. But here's the thing I don't like. And once again, it's a repeated refrain. I don't think the 2-player implementation of these features was not the highest priority on the point of view of the designer. Because what I don't like about the market is this game makes the same mistake that is made over and over and over again. So many designers mess this up. Tzolk'in, the Mayan Calendar, messes it up. Terra Mystica messes it up. In fact, the only game I can think of that hasn't messed up 2-player progress majority tracks is Belfort. Belfort does it great. But the problem is, playing in a 2-player game with this, what happens is each player guarantees gets into spot 1. And then another player, or there's some combination of, well, I'll get up to 2 or 3, and the other player will get up to 2 to 3, and that's pretty much it. Because since the problem is these things are very clearly designed to have multiple players fighting for 2nd and 3rd place. Because there is a 1st place, there is a 2nd place, and there's no 3rd place. But with 4 or 5 players, that means 2 or 3 players are going to be completely shut out of here. And so the competition to come in second place is much more fierce, and the competition to grab first place. In a 2-player game, the competition is not that fierce because you're guaranteed to get half the points if all you got to do is just get 1 fish, 1 apple, 1 corn, one of each of the commodities, and believe me, that's super easy to do. It's not like that's going to be hard at all, and guaranteed you're making half the maximum points you could. Now with 3 or 4 players, there's no way you'd get away with that. You have to compete, you have to try, you have to struggle. But in a 2-player game, this chart becomes very boring and static and dull, and it's a real shame. And like I said, it's a shame in Tzolk'in the Mayan calendar. It's a shame in lots of games because these types of gameplay mechanisms, these kind of chart competition things, they need to have at least 1 more player on. They need to have a dummy player that has a certain set of rules. And again, if you look to Belfort, which did them perfectly, you can see a way that instantly elevates that. If the designers of St. Petersburg 2.0 had seen how Belfort had done it and had realized, wow, we should really do that for the 2-player of St. Petersburg as well, I think I'd be going for this over this. Because I like the idea of it, but I think the implementation as a 2-player specific game is so meh. Then this core thing is just like, whatever, I guess it's there. It's just there in a 2-player game. And so I think it just really missed a trick. Now, if we played St. Petersburg a lot as 3, 4, 5, then I think things get very exciting. A lot of these systems work really, really well. But as it is, for a 2-player game, the only one that I'm really in love with is the obstacles and to a certain extent the objectives. But the implementation and everything else just did not make it worth saying goodbye to the art style that I love so much. We really like St. Petersburg original, the look of it more, and so I think we'll be sticking with this as opposed to making the jump. If we had more players, we might make the jump, but that's it, folks. That's the difference between the 1.0, or the 1.5 really, because of the new Banquet and Society expansions, but that's the difference between the 1.5 and the 2.0. And there you go, folks. That was St. Petersburg. Any questions, comments, concerns? As always, let me know. Disagree? I imagine there's probably quite a few who do. By all means, I'd be more than happy to engage you in a happy and delightful dialogue. Bear in mind, these are just my opinions. I could be totally wrong. Other people might think that this kind of thing works great for 2 players. But those are just our feelings, and I think I'm going to end it right there. So, thanks for watching, everybody. Talk to you later. So long. Auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss. Bye-bye.